Hello and welcome to the third session of Creative Connect, to our lunch seminar. So for those of you who are new here, this is the third session of our webinars that we do during lunches for the project Recreate. And today we're going to take a look at AI plus fashion industry with Petra Fagerström and Sofi Elfving from Substorm as a case study. And for those of you who are new here, this is a webinar series where we look at case studies of interesting AI applications for various creative sectors. And previously we have had Tatic Studio with industrial design and iStudio's Visuals talking about film, VFX and post-production for film. But today the focus is of course on fashion design and textile and integrating AI in design process for fashion and textile. And to give some context about the project, this is Project Recreate, which is an AI Sweden project. I guess most of you are familiar with that already. And the purpose of Recreate is to support creative industries in Sweden with AI application in relation to design process and with a special focus on visualization in design process. And I think today's webinar will serve as a good example of that. And to give some background, Project Recreate is a 2-year project. It is funded by Västra Götalandsregionen and Tillväxtverket. And the focus of this project is to explore the possible uses of AI in creative sectors. And the sectors we have decided to focus on are film, and in particular post-production for film, architecture, design, and in particular industrial design, textile and fashion. And today we will look at textile and fashion. And what we do during these lunch seminars is to look at interesting case studies and projects from these creative sectors. And the background is of course that AI in general, but generative AI in particular, has been discussed for quite a few years now as a possibility for visualization in design processes. But the particulars of application and implementation, integration, and also usefulness are not always quite clear. So this is why we look at these case studies. The project also has other activities. We do lectures, meetings, seminars in order to inform about AI in general and generative AI in particular for creative sector use, focusing on case studies. But we also plan on doing workshops, and the next workshop is on the 5th of December, and here you see the QR code which you can use to get more information and enroll to this workshop. And the purpose of these workshops and also coming workshops is to explore in practice how design process can be enhanced by AI in your organization. So of course this in particular is directed towards companies and other organizations that have connections to film, architecture, design, and textile and fashion, and are interested in testing, exploring, discussing, and in particular finding concepts for using generative AI in their organization. So if you're interested in that, you're super welcome to join in this workshop or coming activities and meet AI experts and discuss how to work with AI. And you can come if you have a very loose idea about this and interest, or if you have a more particular interest in mind. And the idea for this coming workshop is to in particular look at generative AI in all steps of a creative design process and what benefits it can bring, but also, of course, discuss disadvantages, problems, things that you don't want to do. The approach for us in all our activities is to listen to creative sectors and find what actual needs you have for AI or actual ideas that are present in these sectors. And I think this is the way to go, to find those kind of ideas and concepts that where you actually get benefit from AI, and you can do it with high quality. So it is interesting to you, please come to our workshop. And we hope to identify more interesting use cases in the long run. And I should also mention that we have a website and a newsletter where we communicate about these webinars and upcoming activities. So please sign up. Here's the web address and the QR code. And we try to also use this as a communication channel for more interesting use cases, new methods, new events, etc. So for today, here's the agenda. We have already heard some project introduction, and I do realize that I forgot to introduce myself to new participants. My name is Andrea Nordvall, and I'm a PhD candidate of mechanical engineering at the Blekinge Institute of Technology. And my research interests are, of course, generative AI, visualization, XR, and virtual production. And I work in several research projects connected to that. And this project is, of course, one of them. And I should say also that Blekinge Institute of Technology is one of several universities that are part of the Recreate project network and is collaborating with Recreate. And the long-term plan is, of course, to connect your concepts and ideas with universities. So one thing that we recently sent out in our newsletter was information about how to pitch a concept so that we can contact universities to suggest your concept as a possible thesis work collaboration. And we have this kind of collaboration with Blekinge Tekniska Högskola, Chalmers Tekniska Högskola, HDK Valand, and Göteborgs University. But we are looking to, of course, expanding this network of collaboration. So this is something that we're looking forward to in this workshop. And for today, we will listen to Petra Fagerström and Sofi Elfving Hallberg. Petra Fagerström is a fashion designer and the lead for Petra Fagerström Studio. Sofi Elfving Hallberg is the CEO and founder of Substorm, and they are going to present an interesting case study from fashion, which we then, after the presentation, will have the opportunity to discuss. So if you have questions, comments, something interesting to say, please do post these in the comments or the chat for Zoom, and we can address them after the presentation by Petra and Sofi. Hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Good to see you. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so very exciting to have you here today and talk about case studies. But let's talk about your project, and then we can move on to questions, comments, and more open and discussion later. And I should say that this is the first session we do in the creative sector, related to creative sector of fashion and textile. So it's very interesting to hear about your work with this Vinnova project. Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Andrea. Can you see our screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, good. And thank you, AI Sweden, for letting us into this webinar and so we can present our super interesting project. But first, I will hand it over to you, Petra. Who are you and what are you actually working on?
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Petra Fagerström, founder of my own brand with the same name. So I'm a fashion designer based in London. I was previously working in the industry in Paris, but then relocated to London from where I've been building my brand. Um, so now I'm an independent, small brand operating in London, distributing in Europe and the States. And what about you, Sophie?
Yeah, as you've heard, my name is Sofi. I'm the CEO and founder of Substorm, a company that delivers AI solution to different industry. I have been working within the AI area, or as we used to say back in the early 2000, we worked with machine learning. So plus 20 years. I've done that and have a long background within telecommunications in various fields. And then I decided to jump the enterprise career, start Substorm in 2019. And here we are working with fashion and a lot of other things. But I think we should jump into the actual background of why we're sitting here and how we connected AI and fashion, or how Petra connected AI and fashion. So please, Petra, continue.
Yeah, sure. So this project kind of came about from initially kind of my fear of AI. As early as when I was working at Balenciaga years ago now, there was this kind of sense that people wanted to try, and we kind of did try to use it. It was mostly Mid-Journey that was being used. And then I kind of started experimenting with it in my practice. Say a year and a half ago. And what I felt was that there was this like general fear of putting your designs into an AI tool, not knowing with 100% certainty what that does to your IP, and whether or not the AI tool would, train on your designs and then maybe suggest something similar to someone else. And I also felt like a lot of the AI that existed and that I was trying to use was kind of catered towards fast fashion. So there wasn't really anything that I felt actually was helping me as a creative and as a designer. And more so AI that can, analyze trends and kind of analyze a whole season of shows and tell fast fashion brands what's going to be the next thing based off what we basically do. And then generating like these quick images that to me as a fashion designer doesn't help much, because the research is such a big part of my practice, and knowing exactly what I'm referencing and what the cultural implications of that image is, which didn't feel like it was kind of safe to use with existing AI. So as a curious person, I reached out to Sophie, because I wanted to talk a bit more about it and, talk about the concerns that I had. So we had a really great conversation about this and sort of decided to pursue the project. Maybe Sophie can talk a bit about how it continued from that conversation.
Yeah. And here you have a few kind of parts of your lineup.
Yeah. So this is from 2 collections ago, where I was actually being inspired by digital and AI, and looking at kind of how AI sort of can misrepresent garments, and then try to implement that in my cutting and in my textiles. But I'm not going to go too much into that because I can get lost a bit in that. But that was the collection I was working on when we were also starting this project together.
Yeah. And that was actually what kind of caught my attention, because I hadn't had any, or we hadn't had any kind of focus on fashion before. We were basically, I would say, with the old-fashioned AI. Everybody knows that we're in hype, a lot of generative AI and so on. We try to stick with the kind of proven practices within AI that we know works and can be put in production. So that's why when Petra gave me a call, I got very interested, because although we have been working with a lot of types of kind of cases, everything from identifying viruses on cucumber plants to art prints, visual and image processing, to welding, and to VR, XR representation. This on the right side is actually part of Skellefteå city. And so on. We had done nothing within the fashion, although we touched upon the art things. So I had a extremely interesting conversation with Petra, and my kind of head went into spin. This would be very interesting to look at, because the creative process and how you can actually protect the IP of the designer puts a lot of pressure on the technology you use, if you should use it at all. So after also bringing that back to the company, have a lot of discussion with our CDO, our super experts, Emanuel Johansson, on this. He also went kind of mad in his mind and said this would be a great way to push the technology, but also with the focus on the creative process and the actual user, the designers. So be very kind of value driven instead of tech driven. What value can we bring into the design process, and what part of the design process should we actually use in this area? So I would say it went very fast from the first call, Petra, to that, okay, we need to finance this in some way because we wanted to do it. We wrote up an research application in like 3 weeks or something like that. That was the fastest one ever, I would say. And fortunately, or lucky for us, we got an approval from Vinnova to actually start this 1-year project. So we got that okay in October 2024, and November we kicked it off. And I think from my perspective, working with the technology for such a long time is how we can actually push the technology, where to actually use it, where not to use it, and also keep it as sustainable as possible over time. So with that, we kicked off the project, kind of leading the way in our company in a totally new direction as well. But let's dig into the actual case study and what we actually have done. And Petra, can you lead us through the kind of your design process and your thinking in this project?
Yeah, so I mean, basically for me, the main point was really first and foremost that it would have to be sort of a safe space for me to feel confident that I can upload my designs. Because I think when you're in the really creative part of this job, the point is actually of me creating new ideas, not generating new ideas with AI. So it was important that I could, upload whatever it is that I have created, and then with the help of the AI, make modifications or kind of streamline some of the further design process down the line. I also was thinking about how, we're so scared of AI sort of taking our jobs. So why is all AI created kind of doing the things we want to do instead of doing the things we don't want to do? So it was also this like idea of thinking about like what parts of the design process is actually not using my key skills. So it kind of always starts with this idea of the lineup, which is sort of the overview of the collection. And you kind of start building this lineup with like sketches or collages, or then at the first step, kind of your first prototypes and first twirls. And when you sort of start visualizing this, that's when you start to defining like the fabrics, trying different shapes, like kind of modifying things. And I think that's where it would be kind of taking out a huge step and a lot of resources to have this tool where you can, you know, take a photo of a fabric that you have, scan it, and then apply the fabric to certain garments. You can also kind of look at the color balance, move different fabrics around. So to be able to sort of modify those things and try different outputs without actually having to sew each prototype in a different fabric. When I was working in the industry, we would actually make prototypes in like 3 or 4 colors, sometimes in like 5 different fabrics to present to the creative director, and then they would pick the one that, you know, fits the lineup the best. And then from this overview, you would then be able to kind of zoom in to a specific look and work on it more in detail. So that would be, you know, asking to maybe try it in like a bigger size or smaller size, like adding certain details, kind of changing the fabric, changing the colors, you know, kind of fine tuning that look before producing the final sample or like the final show piece. Because I do think as much as, you know, I want to make as much of the work myself, if I can streamline this decision making to be a bit more efficient and for me to make kind of the right decisions as soon as possible, that would save a lot of fabric and it would save a lot of time. So that was kind of one of the key things. And then sort of a vision I have also moving forward would be to also bring in this administrative idea, which I think could be something for the future to also think about how this tool can help with like admin relief and, you know, making lists of like each garment, giving them product codes, you know, the fabric compositions, like all these things is just a lot of admin for designer to sit and write down and organize, which I think is also something that, you know, would be great help that then would actually allow the designer to spend more time designing. Because I think the key thing is really not for the AI tool to actually jump in and design. It's more like making it easier for the designer to design and be creative. And I think that's sort of the way to have an AI tool that encourages creativity of the user rather than doing the thing we're all scared of, which is like taking the creative role. So yeah, that's kind of a bit about like the creative process, and sort of what we have been discussing a lot while working on this. And also I think one key thing would also to have like the fabric library and sort of being able to build kind of fabrics that you scan and kind of have fabric select that you then start applying to the work. And we also have, I mean, you can see on the board back, the function to be able to bring your research and kind of concept and ideation into the virtual space.
Yeah, and I can add on that. What we actually did from the beginning is that we need to visualize the lineup and what you have been talking about and kind of zoom in on different outfits. So what we did from a technical perspective was actually to create a 3D environment, basically where you can go around in between those scenes. These are only screenshots right now. And to bring in what Petra just talked about, for instance, bring in the research you've used. Can you say something about how you use your research and this type of important data?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing about research for me is that it's not usually a visual kind of copy, which I think is what oftentimes like generative AI ends up being. So when we use research, kind of the way I work is there's quite important to think about the cultural landscape of where that image comes from and how that interferes with like the culture of the time the photo was taken and also what implications it has now. So I think that's also like one of the issues where generative AI that I've been trying, like for example, Midjourney, it doesn't have cultural sensitivity and it doesn't really have an experience in that way where it can only visually kind of represent the research image, but it can't conceptually translate a research image. I think it's important to bring in the research that you have into the tool, and it can be like a conceptual guideline, and it can, like, through maybe text and explanation, sort of guide the process forward without being just like a visual, you know, database, essentially. If we try to talk about how AI works. So yeah, I think it was important for me that it's not this tool where you add your research image and a desired output and it kind of generates it for you. I think that was the important thing.
Yeah, so we kind of aim to kind of bring in the data, but kind of skip applying AI on the stuff that it wouldn't be applied on because it doesn't bring any value, and we don't want to kind of mixture with Petra's creative process because that's what make the designs from you so unique. And that was a super interesting case from the technology perspective, as well as when you start to bring in, for instance, a fabric library, you have different fabrics, and it looks and should be felt in a different way. And when you start to work with like AI to use that to change fabrics on different garments, it's kind of distorted. So we have worked a lot. We did definitely end up with a lot of challenges with keeping the models like fenced, not being too creative, because it's actually the models that is kind of used right now and is kind of in the forefront is built and trained for actually be creative or generate new stuff. And we wanted to keep it like, okay, we need to use this type of fabric on this type of garment, so you can't distort the picture. So that was a huge challenge, and that also challenged us in terms of process. Where should we use it? Where should we not use it? And so on. So just to kind of give you a little hint on what the kind of basic tools look like right now, and it's part of one of your lineup, Petra. And what we have done here is actually combining a lot of different models to be able to kind of pick and choose between fabric and changes. We have done a lot of other stuff as well, but this has been the toughest one, I would say. And Petra, can you relate to what did you think? Was you surprised by how tough it actually was to do this, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like I would never consider, even like I remember you mentioned that there's not enough data on bottoms. And there's, for example, like only like generative AI that understands tops, which to me I don't really understand, the implications of like how AI actually works. So there was a lot of surprises like that for me, and I think um, sometimes you get to this point where like, oh, it's actually just easier to do it manually. Um, or it takes a bit too much creative liberty, because I think it's like the higher the creativity of the user is, the less creative you actually want the tool to be. So when it starts to even change things a little bit, it gets quite frustrating. So if I think there was one point we were trying to add this like print, and it would make it almost a print, but it would change the flowers a bit, or it would change like, just had to like add a little flair to it, which I think like when you have a very precise vision, it can be a bit tricky, which also kind of shows just that the models that have been developed previously have a different aim, than what we have, which is, to generate new things, which also maybe shows that there's like a need for tools like this that more understands like very precise ideas and can like separate, a garment from a look, and then change only the things you want to change, or the size, or kind of understand garment construction and then put it back.
Yeah.
In my head, it would be way easier, but you never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and that's like when we kicked it off, we of course it's part of a research project, so of course it should be challenging. But I think we also thought that it would be just, especially with the fabric and the patterns, that it would be easier, not easy, but easier. I know our main developer in this project, Eva Tusian, she worked like the entire summer to get this working, actually the fabrics, because we had everything else working, but it's still distorted the patterns and the size, and was trying to kind of create new stuff. And in the end, we were able to actually get this working. And I would say, especially to the tops, that's very interesting. That there is a lack of data on bottoms in general. That is also a finding, and we will come back to the finding. But actually, what we managed to do is to actually extract the garment and process it with a new fabric, and then put it on to the model, and it looks actually okay now. Before it was like it started to create a lot of different things and putting new colors and stuff on the back and so on. And that's yeah, it's in that way the tech part is also a creative process, because you don't know what you will get when you use this type of AI. So surprise for Petra and surprise for us as well. But I think we've pushed the technology as far as we can get in this sense. And I was thinking I will just show one very simplified slide on tech, not to end up in tech discussions, because that can also kind of go far away. So if you want to get in details about the tech and the models and so on, please contact us afterwards, and we can have a huge discussion about that as well. But we have tried out a lot of different models and things, and pushed the current technology to the edge, what it can do and what it can do. And basically, this is a part of the switching, putting on and off garments on models, and changing fabrics and so on. And the different models that we used in the end to actually do it is first the SAM2, segment anything model from Meta, to extract the garment, to actually find the garment on a model, extract that, and create a product picture, which we put into the Cat Viton Flux model in the end. So you want the 3D model of the garment that you can like turn and look at, and it should be realistic. And even if in the picture you can't see the back, you need to get a realistic picture of the back as well. So here Petra has been the one that says, okay, this looks weird, okay, this is fine, and so on. And of course our developers can understand that as well. But I think that the fun part from them has actually been to interact with Petra live and see the feedback, because it's very different doing this or doing visual inspections of cucumber plants, because they will not respond in the same way. In the end, we used stable diffusion, and this is boxed. It's like private environment, so no IP or no design leaves the platform or the model layer. And to keep it even more secure, we have used our own large language model and the chat functionality assist that we have in our super secure platform. So it doesn't leave, it's fully secured, and so on. And then you change the design with the help of stable diffusion in the end, and also a chat prompt. But there we also found out it's quite hard to write what you want it to do, especially when it comes to those small details. And that's what you said, Petra, that the small details you want to do yourself. That's part of the creative process. So in the end, you get kind of new fabric and a little bit of change on the garment, and then you try the garment back on to the model, and you kind of have the changes in that. So I would say this was the most challenging part, except for actually getting the data needed. Other learnings, Petra, what was your kind of you were most surprised of in this sense when we're coming to an end to the project? It has gone a year now.
It went by so quickly. I mean, I do think that like the key learning was also, that I think maybe it's not actually necessary everywhere, and that maybe it's quite good to be a bit mindful of where do you actually apply AI and where do you not. And I do think there's, great potential still with this kind of tool to help the design process. But I also kind of started appreciating like the beauty of me being able to do these things like myself as well. I think what I did not expect was actually that I would want the tool to be less creative, and come up with less ideas, because at first you're like, oh, it's so cool that it can like do this and this and this. And then the more you work with it, you're like, oh, actually, could it not do that? And could it maybe also not do this? Because I think when you don't have like a background in AI, you sort of have this idea that it's this like magic tool, and it does whatever you say. But now that I kind of understand a bit more how it works, I'm also more tempted to kind of, um, be quite strategic about where it's applied. I think there's also like this element of sustainability where the positive benefit of using this tool is to have to like outweigh the energy consumption, or the effort it takes to get the tech to work. So yeah, I guess it's also about kind of reevaluating where is there an added value and where is it not. Yeah, I know, Sophie, what was your key learning?
Yeah, I think first of all, it has been a great year in terms of this, and when you're used to deliver a solution to paying customers, it's absolutely wonderful to actually to experiment and to be more innovative in this type of project where you can push the limit and it hasn't had to be kind of production ready and perfect. Basically, so you can push the limit a lot, and that has been a lot of fun. But we have also experienced that we can't really push the limit with AI in this area too much, because then it starts to do stuff that it's not supposed to do and kind of destroys the creative process. From my perspective, or our perspective, it's super important that you can't kind of increase the level of automation in the project too high, because then you have a process that doesn't work. So part of the process can be AI, other parts should be just digitalized and hands-on from Petra, and other parts should just be the hands-on. So that is important. You use different technologies and different ways of working depending where you are in the process. And this is the same if you look into industry. Some part you do hands-on, some part you can use AI for, but you should use it with a purpose, AI. And the biggest challenge was actually from a technology point of view to keep the models within kind of the frame, not being too creative, not trying to create new stuff. And what we also realized that we need a lot of kind of training for the models to actually handle this type of complex design that Petra's designs are. It's a huge difference between just kind of extracting a t-shirt that is blue and extracting these lovely designs from Petra without actually distorting the image. And the lack of data on bottoms. Basically, we have been into so many forums around the world, digital forums, and they just say like, yeah, if you have the data on bottoms, please bring it to us. And we're like, oh, but we need them to actually do the training, but no one has them. So I guess the large enterprises, the big players, has their own data sources on that one. So what we need to do also in this or in the continuation, because we want to continue in some way. It's actually the training and the data sets that it needs to be kind of in place for it to kind of, for us to be fine-tuning this. Also related to the sustainability part, this changing of garments and restructuring or taking that out to an image and putting it back on with a new fabric, that takes a lot of GPU power. So you need to be very aware of using efficient models and make as little as possible out of it. So that has also been a challenge for us, and also learning that it could go the GPU power or could go way beyond what we think is actually okay. So in that sense, you need to be very decisive on where do you use it, in what part of the process, and how much would you change the stuff with the help of AI. The less would actually be waste if you start to use just like for fun using a lot of GPU power. That is not sustainable over time. And also one finding is that we have the opportunity to actually box the IP and the creative kind of Petra's creative, way of working, so we're not leaking information to outside our platform.
Yeah, I think also like for me, one thing that I've noticed is like as we move ahead with this, I am understanding more what my needs actually are. And I think, if we were to continue, which I would love to do, I think I would kind of aim to also bring in a bit more of that admin aspect. I do think that with AI, it's so fun to do the visual things. So you kind of immediately start with like changing fabrics and doing like all these like visual things. But actually, I think a backwards way of working would maybe benefit us more, which would be, adding a final lineup or like final garments and like already have that done, and then being able to extract information. So I end up also every time I finish a collection, I have to make this document called the line sheet, which has every garment in every look with a code, with the fabric compositions, with percentages. Like it's so much information that I have to like write down and save from here and there and describe and write like product descriptions. And even just being able to extract that from an image or from a lineup would save me so much time. But it's not the first thing I think about, because it's much more exciting to go for like the visual things. But I think now, as we work on this, I'm building this idea of like, oh, actually this and this and this would maybe even be easier and more helpful, which is stuff you kind of always realize towards the end of a project.
Yeah, but that is a super good learning as well, because that matches how it's looked upon in other industries as well. You always go for the fun part and implement AI there, but the return on investment in it and the value it actually delivers there is less compared to if you go and kind of do it with the boring stuff, the things that is not so cool, that doesn't kind of make it a good marketing case for your company, but that's where the value actually is, because there you can automate to a high level. So okay, the innovative cool cases, the fun part, that's one thing. The boring part, usually you find the value there. So that matches very well like the other industries that we are implementing our products into. Okay, maybe we should open up for some questions. And also, if you want to have more information or contact details to the project and to us, let us know. And I think both of us is on LinkedIn as well. So.
Okay, thank you so much. Super interesting breakdown of your project. Very interesting to hear all the aspects and considerations and takeaways you've done. And I must say, for those of you who have been on previous webinars, we start to see a bit of a pattern here in takeaways from across creative sectors, which is quite interesting. And you touched on some very important points here. Let's start with the chat here. We have a question from one participant that says, I guess a lot of time has gone into creating your own data sets. Can you elaborate on that process? Can it be a natural part of the research process? So what's your comment on that?
Yeah, I would say that we haven't put that much effort into this data set. We have been using Substorm's own AI platform, where we have models and tools that is actually very well trained from the beginning. So we have done a cold start on most models to see where that takes us. And then, of course, we have tried out and brought in open source model that is specifically trained for garments and so on. And there you can actually find a lot. But still, what we can have with the tops, we could do with that. It was just 1 year project and a limited budget. So creating data sets takes time, and it's also quite expensive. So if we want to go further and actually do this, have better result for the bottoms and accessories, for instance, we need to do a huge job in that sense with the data creation.
Okay, another question from the participants. How did your colleagues in the fashion industry react to your AI-driven project?
I mean, there's quite a huge mix of reactions. The most like severe ones I've seen is there was this video where I talk about my work that went up on British Vogue's Instagram. And there was a lot of hate that came from that, and people being like, I love this designer until she mentioned AI, and oh, another one, we lost another one to AI, kind of this narrative that, you know, my work was completely invalidated because I had mentioned AI. So I think there sort of is like a risk as a creative to even mention AI. However, you know, usually when I actually talk to people and we talk about, you know, why they are critical of it or why they fear it, and then I talk about, you know, how I see it, the reactions are actually usually quite positive. Especially I've noticed when I mentioned an AI possibly being able to like do more administrative tasks, because I think famously designers are not super into that. So I do think that when people understand more, there's a quite positive reaction to it. But initially, like even the mention of the word kind of causes this outrage at first. Which I think, you know, it would be more beneficial to sort of find a way of having people be a bit more curious or a bit more like open-minded towards it, which hopefully like at least this project can like bring a little bit of that.
Right. I think we live in an age where we see a lot of AI commercialization happening. And we see that lots of web services are launched, and this is most people's point of reference when it comes to AI. We also see a lot of maybe over enthusiasm in automation, and for creative sector that would mean that you would automate the full creative process. Just push a button and get something that would be maybe a good result or not. However, I think you touch on something that is far more interesting and that has been touched on before in all our webinars in different use case studies, and that is assistive use of AI in a strategic way where you focus on undesirable parts of the creative process, not replacing creators, but rather assist them in creating and enabling them for maybe more creative exploration and faster creative iteration. Is this something you recognize as a result from your project?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's like when you start talking about that, that's when people get really interested when we talk about like my colleagues. And you know, in the end, it all comes back to this thing, right? Where we don't want to make AI that does the thing we want to do. If we want to keep doing the thing we want to do. However, if there is an AI that can make it a bit easier to get to the results we want to get to, and that can help us not do the things that take time from creativity, that's a huge benefit. And, you know, for me as like an independent creator, I know that the highest value that I can bring to my own company is the creative work, because that's what I'm good at. So it's such a waste of time of me doing things that I'm not good at when someone like an AI could be much better. So yeah, I really would hope, like, I would love to make that kind of tool happen. That would be great.
For sure. Okay, we have more questions here from participants. How should education in fashion design integrate AI in a value-providing way? This kind of builds on our previous question as well. What's your thoughts on that?
Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yes, it's I have been in kind of discussions regarding education in general for AI, like down to really low grades in school. And I think it's two perspective. You need to understand the actual kind of how AI will impact us, because it's not something that will come, it's here. And we kind of we're forced into this whether we want it or not, and especially the younger generation, they are like AI native right now. So it's extremely important to understand what you get presented to, if it's AI or not, and to be able to be critical in that sense. So you need to be critical to the actually technology and what different user produce out of that technology, because it's not the technology itself, it's actually how you use it. So you need to be aware of that, and that's one part. And then the other part is how you use it yourself, and in which areas, in which part of the design process can you use it, and so on. And it always starts with the purpose and the why. This I always say to our customer, but what's your purpose in the company? Where's your bottlenecks? Where does it hurts the most in the process? That's where you should use it. And maybe you shouldn't start with AI. You should start with something else, some simpler technique to actually kind of level up one bit. And then when you start to learn, you take the next step. So two perspective there on the educational part, and I think that goes for any education. But you need to be aware why you're using it and what you see. If you identify this is AI driven, then you need to be able to be critical about it as well, and that we need to teach.
Yeah, and
For
I would
sure.
say in terms of fashion education, I actually started this while I was still in school. I was still, having classes, and I was quite lucky to have very curious tutors that were very open to me working around this. I think I wasn't met with any hesitation, but there was kind of a general idea from, I think, the course leaders that one should be very careful. But I think they were very good at like understanding my intention about it and my thinking around it and how that aligned with like my broader design practice. And I think that's like a really good tutor, like a good teacher is someone who's able to understand why while also remaining critical to like overuse of AI generated images. Because I know like teachers are starting to see a lot of, even in research, AI images, and maybe it is important to be a bit critical towards like, okay, can we actually do research this way? And if we are adding an AI image to research, why don't we actually like find the source and understand like where does this image come from in real life? Because it must exist in real life somewhere. To like kind of not get lazy and keep doing that digging and doing that creative research and creative work. So I think it is good that like at least there's like an openness in education. And I was actually quite happy to find out recently that they were talking about right now at the course I was studying, they did a class around AI and they were showing this project as an example and also talking about my work to also show students like how it can be done, because I think there's always going to pop up more cases, and I think it's important for fashion education to kind of stay informed and like understand what's going on to also keep the education at the forefront.
Right, for sure. And I think this is a quite common concern both among the AI critics you encountered and also in education, is that that is not to outsource creative decisions, but rather to complement the design process in various ways. We have another last final question. It's quite interesting. and there's a participant that says, let's say the model will eventually work. Do you envision them translating into 2 dimensions, therefore ready to send the pattern of the garment to production, kind of reverse engineering Clo 3D? And I should say that, and this is of course familiar to you already, but you in this project, it's a 1-year project, you approach this from a 2D image perspective and work with 2D image generators with interaction from LLMs, language models also to enhance this interaction. But there is lots of research happening in other modalities such as video, garments based on 3D scanning, point clouds, meshes, and something that seems very promising is also to codify garment pattern making into structured texts, so that you can train on these texts and then generate new patterns. And these could possibly interact with industry software for virtual garment creation like Clo 3D in the end. We're not there yet, but this is a possibility. So there are lots of things happening in this area as well, and this might also be a possible continuation of your project. I know. I really like your hands-on practical approach, because a lot of this research needs to be contextualized, tried out in actual practice. So what is your comment about these future prospects?
Yeah, I mean, Sophie has heard me talk about Clo 3D before. This sounds like a bit like a dream. I think, you know, Clo 3D, for those who may be listening from not a fashion perspective, Clo 3D is a software that allows you to, on one side, kind of do pattern cutting 2D, and then it translates that into like a 3D rendering of those garments, like on a model in a very realistic way. And you can also like see it in movement. It takes into account like the fabric density, how it falls. My absolute dream would be, you know, to of course be able to just work with the AI, you know, in the tool and be like, oh, can we grade this up 2 sizes? Could we make this hem a little bit shorter and the sleeve a bit like this? Visualize that and then bring it into Clo 3D and then bring it into pattern, print it out and be able to do it physically. Then you would save yourself a lot of time and steps. And it would also allow people to have a bit more limited pattern cutting, you know, knowledge to use Clo 3D. I don't know. I think Sophie knows better how far away we are from that. But I do think that would be like something highly beneficial and potentially risky, but
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we need to round off. So I need to. It's approaching 1 o'clock. So thank you very much. Sorry for not going deeper. We might get back to that later on. So I should say once again, please consider enrolling to our workshop. We have a question from a participant about engineering industry, working with CAD. And yes, this is something we can discuss. Please contact us if you have detailed questions like this. And finally, I would like to say thank you very much for participating, and thank you for presenting your interesting project. And I for sure hope there will be a continuation of this, because there are lots of interesting future prospects that we could explore in the future, but let's talk about that during this Recreate project. And thank you very much for participating and presenting today. Very, very, very interesting and inspiring.
Thank you.
thank you.